You know what to do. Start now. Director Abernathy.
I watched the vote. What the hell was that?
A deep clean after the shit Frankfurt dumped on us. As we agreed, I got rid of the problem.
I told you to resolve the problem, not massacre the European Space Council. Do you understand what the cover-up will cost?
We would have lost the license. Now we gained a week. That's a win.
Path of least resistance always. No nuance. Has you written all over it. We're not done talking about this.
What would you say that this scene tells you as a player? Now, if someone asked me that question, I'd say that that scene tells you everything you need to know about the world that you are in. Part 1. The Genius. First of all, companies can kill democratically elected members of government and get away with it. But not just that. This scene tells you so much more. In this world, for you to get classified information, sometimes that information has to be given to you via an electronic shard. A shard that you proceed to insert inside your head because obviously you have the equipment that can read these shards. If you've played the game for any amount of time, I'm sure you've noticed that no one ever stops to ask you, hey, can you read this shard I'm about to give you? They just give it to you and assume that you can. That would be the equivalent of asking someone for their phone number today. No one ever bothers to ask you if you have one. People just assume that you do and that you also have a phone. Later during the same scene, your manager at Arasaka makes it clear to you that he wants you to kill the manager of a different team. He gives you some untraceable cash to hire any necessary killers or equipment. The game doesn't need to hit you over the head with NPCs talking to each other and being like, oh, corporations have so much power, they're too brutal. Instead, you, the player, you get to plan the assassination of a manager who, by the way, works at the same company as you. If workers at your company are willing to assassinate each other, just imagine what they're willing to do to civilians outside the company, or anyone else outside the company for that matter. This is exposition done so perfectly that it becomes invisible. That is the introduction we get to this world. At least if we chose to go with a corporate life path. Just as an aside, for those who haven't played this game, Cyberpunk offers you 3 different life paths, which are basically your character's backstory before the game truly begins. Have you ever wondered why V always jacks into devices with a physical wire? V, for those of you who haven't played this game yet, is the main character of Cyberpunk 2077. And since this is the future, you'd assume that Bluetooth technology would be so good that you should be able to just transfer any files of any size over Bluetooth. I mean, this is 2077 after all. So why do we have to jack into things like this? The game doesn't need to explain to you that you can get infected by jacking into the wrong person or thing. During the first mission of the game, you're tasked with rescuing a girl that has been kidnapped. Her name is Sandra Dorset. When you find Sandra Dorset in a tub full of ice, you need to check to make sure that she's in good condition. The only way to do this is for you to physically jack into her head, an act that instinctively feels weird and dangerous. You as a player, you still don't know if this is dangerous or not. You're new to the game, but you can somehow feel that this could result in trouble for you. This action ends up infecting you, and Victor Vector has to help you get rid of the infection. While researching for this video, I made it my mission to try and understand how CDPR built Night City to make it so addictive. I needed to know how the devs and the designers and the script writers go about creating something from scratch, and the thing ends up being so unique, believable, and immersive. Part 2. The World. Let's begin with things that were left out of the game. There are things that are quintessential to the cyberpunk genre that we don't get to see much of in the game at all. Things like holograms, for example. They do exist here and there, sure. Like when the police in Night City are trying to recreate a crime scene, for example, you can see them use equipment that displays a projection of what happened just like a hologram would. According to the then Quest designer, Pawel Sasko, CD Projekt Red decided not to add too many holograms because this would hurt the world they were trying to create. Pawel said that the world as created by Mike Pondsmith had its own unique identity, and in essence, this identity had to be respected during the creation of the game. Since Star Wars is the franchise best known for having lots of holograms, if CDPR had just added a bunch of holograms in the game, they would have reminded us of those classic movies. However, building a world from scratch does not mean that you reinvent the wheel. Some things very specific to the genre of cyberpunk, and CDPR, whether they wanted to or not, had to learn how to build these things and put them in the game. Things like architecture, for example. Yeah, we're going to talk about architecture. Not for a very long time and not in a pretentious way, but yeah, we are. Architecture is very important to any city, and Night City is no different. There is some interesting history to this whole thing, and yes, it does involve another Swede. In 1950, a Swedish architect named Hans Asplund coined the term New Brutalism to describe a building in Uppsala. This term caught on and spread throughout Europe. The main aspects of New Brutalism were art brut and béton brut, which simply means raw artistry and raw concrete. Things like leaving concrete exposed after it has settled on a building was one of the aspects of this new brutalism. Aside from this, one of the leading figures of brutalism in architecture was a guy called Le Corbusier. That was not his original birth name, but he just gave himself the name Le Corbusier, almost the same way that Madonna just gave herself the name Madonna. I won't get too deep into architecture for this video, more than to explain this one thing. Architecture is what decides how people live in cities. If you think about cities like Neo-Tokyo in Akira, for example, where industrialization exploded in a very short period of time, you can see how drastic things look in the streets and dark alleyways. Living is rough, dirty. Due to the lack of land, people are forced to build taller and taller buildings. The people of this world are doing their best to adapt, but there's a sense that a lot of them are not going to make it. So the young men, as they usually do, turn towards gang activities and a violent lifestyle, which is where we find one of the main characters of the anime, Kaneda. In Blade Runner, we see a few examples of brutalist architecture being used to impose a sense of hierarchy on the viewer. Each building of significance looks menacing. And even without confirmation, you can kind of tell that the most important people in this building have their offices at the top. Now, it's very easy to notice when a city is poorly planned. However, if a city has been perfectly planned with humans in mind, things just make sense and you don't think about it that much. Again, perfection is invisible. In Cyberpunk 2077, brutalism is used as the main architectural style when designing both living spaces and working spaces. The Arasaka Tower is a good example of this. From the outside, it's just this huge menacing concrete thing where hierarchies are physically divided. The people who are higher up in the food chain reside on the upper floors, whereas the workers, scientists, and any other people who are less important are found below. The building that V lives in is also a brutalist building. Have you ever wondered why there are shops, restaurants, gyms, and gun stores inside the mega buildings? Why do mega buildings in Cyberpunk have all the facilities and amenities inside the building instead of outside? Have you thought about it? Are you done? Okay, good. I'm sure most of you already figured this out, but for those of you who haven't, here's a clue. In the world of Cyberpunk 2077, part of it has something to do with this guy.
How many fingers am I holding up?
No, Johnny. Fuck off, please.
You missed me. Warms the cockles. Truly.
In 2023, 2 assault teams attacked Arasaka headquarters in Night City. Johnny Silverhand was part of one team and Morgan Blackhand was part of the other team. During the assault on Arasaka Tower, a nuclear device exploded, killing thousands of people. When this happened, everybody had to run home and lock themselves in their houses to avoid, well, death. Now, let's be honest, if you live in a major city, a place like Brussels, Boston, Bangkok, or Barcelona, chances are you're not a prepper. You don't have 50 kilos of rice, 20 kilos of frozen meat, and 100 kilos of canned goods in your tiny one-bedroom apartment. Chances are, if a nuclear device exploded in your city and you had to stay inside, you'd run out of food, water, and other necessities very quickly. Unless you lived in a mega building that has dozens of stores, restaurants, and underground storage areas full of supplies. All of a sudden, that brutalist architecture is starting to look quite attractive. Keep in mind that the game doesn't need to explain all of this to you the way that I just did. You never once walk inside a mega building and wonder why people live here. At the same time, it never feels strange that there's an open gym right next to a restaurant, right next to a gun store. And truthfully, it shouldn't. The creators of the game have shown you enough information that on a subconscious level, it just makes sense that people would live in these mega buildings. The game does not lock you into one mega building for the duration of your stay in Night City. Instead, it offers you options and you can choose to purchase an apartment in the city center or in one of the surrounding districts and experience the differences for yourself. Giving players options is nothing new for an RPG. But it's rare that the choices offered make you feel this immersed in the world. Most of us have played GTA before, so we know all about choices in video games. We've all played Detroit Become Human, where you'll be prompted by the game to choose something that might change how the game ends. These are all things that we know. What about the choices that the game does not tell you about? What about the choices that the player makes without knowing that they've made them? Let's talk about those. Let's talk about the power of hidden choices and the dedication it took to create them and hide them in the game without telling anyone. Part 3: The Dedication. In September 2023, Rockstar Games released Grand Theft Auto 5 and nothing was ever the same after that. I remember playing the first 8 hours of the game from midnight to 8 AM without taking any major breaks. I mean, sure, I had to go pee from time to time, but apart from that, I was hooked. One of the first side missions I played was the one where Franklin helped out Tanya with towing cars. Tanya's boyfriend, JB, was the one who was supposed to do this, but he was busy. He was stuck at home taking drugs, I think. For those of you who don't remember this, allow me to refresh your memories. Recently, as part of research for this video, I decided to replay GTA 5 and compare some of the storytelling and world-building aspects to Cyberpunk 2077. Now, as a kid, during this side gig or side mission, I would park the tow truck and then just leave immediately. I was too eager. There was so much to see, so much to do, I didn't have time to just stop for 1 second. Now that I'm a little bit older, I decided to just wait in my car and see what happens. This is what I found out.
Is that Pete? It's Tanya. You know more than one Tanya? Yeah, JB's girl. His sale's out a minute, so he asked me to let you know that the job's all done. Be easy now. His allergies been giving him hell. Nah, I'd know if he was into any of that. Cold 40 and a redwood, maybe a fat one on the weekends. That's as far as it goes. What you mean? Work ethics, that nigga's middle name. J-W-E-B or whatever, you feel me? He don't have step. You seen the style I put out. I wouldn't be with no deadbeat. I'll tell him. Don't you fret now, work will get done. Control yourself, boy. You got the Tanya fever.
This may not be something new to you, and it may not even seem like a choice to some people, but it is. By choosing to sit still in this location of the map, you as a player are putting yourself in the best position to hear the hidden conversation. And guys, if I'm being fully honest, I went into this phase of my research thinking that I'll find GTA 5 to be so inferior to Cyberpunk 2077. It's after all an older game, built with old gen in mind. Surely it can't hold a candle to Cyberpunk, right? I was wrong. I thought I'd find no examples like the one I just gave, but to my surprise, there were a lot of them. Rockstar did an amazing job with GTA 5. It has a lot of cool stuff going for it, even now 11 years later. To this day, I still learn a lot of new stuff about GTA 5, mostly from watching Dark Viper AU. So you can imagine that at this point I felt like I'd hit a dead end. I was contemplating that perhaps I should just end the video right here, since I had no new insights, no new information to offer. And the worst kinds of YouTube videos, at least for me, are the ones where the creator spends around 40 minutes talking about something without really saying anything of substance. I did not want to be part of that problem. GTA 5 was fun, so I thought, why not just keep playing this game? Why not end this Cyberpunk video here and focus on just enjoying myself and playing GTA 5 instead? And so, for a while, I did. I played about 6 or 7 hours of GTA and nothing. I felt no connection to either of the three main characters. Now please understand me correctly. I enjoyed playing with Michael, Franklin and Trevor. They complement each other extremely well, and I'm sure I'll make a video about this phenomenon someday in the future, but it felt like I was an outsider looking into their lives for a brief moment in time. I didn't create Michael, Franklin or Trevor. These are characters that Rockstar created and gave them to me fully formed. They never once felt like my characters, if that makes sense. The immersion was just not there. Not like what I'm used to with Cyberpunk 2077. Simply walking around Night City feels more immersive to me than flying over Los Santos in a private jet. And just like that, I was back. My motivation to finish the script was back. And as I watched interviews and read Cyberpunk books, one thing kept jumping out at me. Quality of thought dictates quality of life. Simply put, if you put enough high quality thought into something, it doesn't really matter what the initial state of that thing is. Eventually, you're going to have an amazing item on your hands. As consumers, it's always easy for us to underestimate what it takes to make something new and unique like Cyberpunk 2077. Pawel started his journey at CDPR as a quest designer and worked his way up to today being the associate game director at the company. He once talked about his experiences with working on this game.
And that was so, it was such a difficult, trip to answer all of those questions. There was like so much stuff said there. And I'm glad that they actually picked, some of those more, I would say, difficult and heartbreaking answers. When I was sitting there in that armchair, like just listening to the questions and thinking what the hell I'm supposed to say. It's hard to express, like when you're putting so much heart and soul into something. And for some of us, it's been like, 6, 7, 8 years sometimes. Especially for those who started at the very beginning. So like to have this moment of actually like people, liking something that we did is really feeling like a bit unreal. That finally are people appreciating it. Like after the release, I couldn't believe, Like after some time, of course, I did, but at the beginning, I just couldn't believe. And I remember Sapphire, who was with me at that time, my dear girlfriend. She was like seeing me fucking completely wrecked. Yeah, but it's good to be back,
My Polish friends never gave up. They, just like me, believe that quality of thought dictates quality of life, and they were determined to make the life of the game be the best it could be. The quality of thought had always been there from the beginning. Even going back to the very first Cyberpunk 2077 gameplay demo, you can kind of tell that the amount of high quality thought that had gone into the game was different. Execution was where CDPR had messed up, and to be honest, they messed up big time. They should have never released the game in the state that it was. And honestly speaking, that's why it took me over a year to even begin playing the game. When speaking of quality of thought, a clear example of what I mean is this. CDPR integrated a hidden mechanic in the game that no one ever gives them credit for. Today, we will talk about it and give them credit for it. This mechanic is something that I named the passive choice. It's a mechanic to help the player discover hidden questions and things in the game. Unlike GTA San Andreas, where you had to enter a unique cheat code to get the hidden thing that you wanted. By the way, it's hilarious that the cheat code for a thunderstorm in GTA San Andreas is called Scottish Summer. In LA Noire, for example, if you're questioning a suspect and they are obviously lying to you, you can press X to doubt their statement. In Cyberpunk though, all you have to do is be passive. Completely passive. Be passive at the right place at the right time, and you'll see something that most of your friends didn't even know existed in the game. Now, I could leave things like this and just give you my source for this information, or I could show you some examples. So that's what I'm going to do. Here are some examples of passive choices in Cyberpunk 2077. These are just some examples, but there's more, a lot more in the game. The game never tells you that any of this exists. As of July 2024, CDPR has exactly 0 developers working on Cyberpunk 2077. All of their developers have been assigned to new projects, with the upcoming Witcher 4 taking priority. This means that we won't be getting any major updates to the game. In some ways, that's good because everything I've talked about here will hopefully stay consistent over time. The appreciation and effort that the CDPR team put into making immersion great is often overlooked. They fixed things in the game that most of us forgot were even a problem. Things that broke immersion so badly that players started to quit the game because of it. Things like Dildogate. Of course, some of you have been with the game so long that you remember this being a problem. But others, the new players of the game, they might not even know that this was ever a problem.
So exit to the next level. I wanna talk to you about a bit after about something that we call the Dildogate. So the Dildogate was actually such a insane issue. So basically we designed like some dildos in together with like a bunch of teams. It was between like our props team and narrative department, because we've been like, you know, designing the names for those dildos and so on. The names that you can see in the game, actually, like on those packages and stuff. So we were designing that, and that stuff went to like our art team to like make it, and was made like nice like polished assets and stuff. And then those assets went into the game, right? And then basically there was a moment when our RPG team was working on basically preparing like loot for the game and all that stuff. And that like group of those dildos was included into the items that were basically like randomly appearing in the like I would say miscellaneous small items in the game. But there was an issue in the setup of the loot. By some reason, those dildos, they were actually spawning much more often than designed. And there was this one dildo that is like fucking the size of the arm, right? It's like this fucking big, right? Like it was like this tall, right? And that dildo was like appearing everywhere, right? We had them in like parking lot, we had them in like church, you know, like there were places when like people were praying, you know, like you literally have those monks and they're surrounded by those dildo loot.
In conclusion, this has obviously been a very, very biased video. I love Cyberpunk 2077. I mean, just look at how I present my YouTube channel. As I try to make content about other games and other things, I felt that a video like this should exist, so I made it. I made a video solely for the purposes of saying thanks to CDPR for creating this beautiful game. So yeah, thank you CD Projekt Red. That has been it for today, guys. Be good to yourselves and to others, and I'll catch you in the next one.